It started as a normal afternoon in our quiet suburban neighborhood. My wife was walking back from the mailbox when a man in a reflective vest and a cheap-looking HOA security badge stopped her. He claimed she had violated neighborhood rules by parking too close to the curb. She calmly explained we weren't in violation, but his tone escalated quickly. Then, in an act of cowardice, he slapped her across the face, thinking fear would force obedience. What he didn't know was two things. First, he wasn't a real HOA officer. He was a fraud, preying on neighbors with intimidation. And second, I'm a Navy SEAL commander. When my wife called me, I was home in minutes. Years of tactical training kicked in. I approached, assessed, and immediately realized his uniform was fake. His stance, his demeanor, everything screamed imposter. Calm but firm, I confronted him. When he tried to get aggressive again, I disarmed and restrained him in seconds, making sure he couldn't harm anyone else. Police confirmed what I suspected. He was a con man with prior charges for impersonation and assault. Thanks to my wife's courage and a bit of SEAL discipline, he was taken into custody and our neighborhood learned an important lesson. Intimidation has no place where truth and justice stand firm.
The threat of false authority is something many people underestimate until they or someone close to them encounter it firsthand. When we hear the word authority, we tend to associate it with trust, responsibility, and legitimacy. Police officers, firefighters, military members, homeowners associations, and even corporate leaders are typically respected because they represent order and protection. But what happens when someone wears the uniform, carries the badge, or speaks with the confidence of authority but has none of the legal or moral grounding behind it? That is when danger arises, because the average person often reacts to the symbols of authority rather than verifying the authenticity of the individual presenting them. The problem is not just about being fooled, it is about the potential harm that can come from submitting to someone who is pretending to hold power over you. Imposters exploit this very weakness. They know that most people are conditioned from childhood to respect authority figures. If a man in a badge or a reflective vest tells you to stop, pay a fine, or follow an instruction, the instinct for many is compliance, even before asking questions. This response is not foolish, it is human nature. Societies rely on trust in authority to function. However, that same instinct makes people vulnerable when the authority is false. Criminals and con artists recognize this and use it to intimidate, steal, or even cause physical harm. The fake HOA cop in my story is a prime example. He wore a costume, claimed rules that didn't exist, and used aggression to scare neighbors into following his fabricated authority. Educationally, it is critical to understand that symbols of authority are not proof of authority. A badge can be bought online. A uniform can be imitated with cheap patches. Even documents can be forged with printers available to anyone. Because of this, every individual needs to learn how to verify legitimacy before submitting to demands. Verification does not have to be confrontational. It can be as simple as asking for identification, requesting a call to the local police or HOA office, or even taking a moment to step away and confirm details. True authority figures understand that verification is part of their duty. A real police officer or HOA worker will not be offended if you ask to see credentials or call dispatch. A real HOA representative will welcome you confirming their role. It is the imposter who resists transparency because their power relies on fear, not truth. Another element in recognizing false authority is observing behavior. Genuine authority figures act with professionalism and restraint. They are trained to de-escalate conflict and communicate rules clearly. Imposters, on the other hand, often resort quickly to threats, aggression, or ultimatums. Their lack of training shows in how they handle confrontation. For example, the fake cop who slapped my wife believed that intimidation would achieve compliance. That behavior itself was a red flag. A real officer or HOA worker would never escalate to violence over a parking question. Understanding this difference allows people to notice when something feels wrong and empowers them to respond appropriately. Education on false authority also extends to recognizing our own psychological triggers. Fear, shame, and urgency are tools imposters use effectively. They may claim that immediate action is required, that you will face penalties, or that you are embarrassing yourself by questioning them. These tactics are designed to cloud judgment and push you into compliance without reflection. Training yourself to slow down, ask questions, and remain calm in the face of pressure is one of the strongest defenses against manipulation. Awareness builds resilience, and resilience removes the control imposters rely on. Ultimately, the broader lesson is about empowerment. Communities should not be passive in the face of authority symbols. Instead, we must cultivate a culture where verification is normal, where people feel safe to question respectfully, and where no one is shamed for double-checking credentials. By doing this, we strip imposters of their main weapon, unquestioned compliance. The threat of false authority will always exist, but education and vigilance ensure it cannot thrive. When people understand that respect for authority is earned through legitimacy and accountability, not costumes and intimidation, they become less vulnerable and more capable of protecting themselves and those around them.
The courage to stand against intimidation is one of the most important human qualities, yet it is often misunderstood. Many people believe courage is the absence of fear, but in truth, courage is the decision to act in spite of fear. When faced with intimidation, whether physical, verbal, or psychological, the natural instinct is to retreat or comply to avoid conflict. That instinct exists to protect us, but when intimidation is unjust or harmful, silence and compliance give power to the aggressor. Standing up in those moments is not only about protecting oneself, it is about sending a signal that fear tactics will not succeed, and that respect cannot be forced through violence or threats. In the story of my wife being slapped by a fake HOA cop, what stands out most to me is her courage to call me immediately and report what happened, rather than shrinking into silence. Some people, after being struck or humiliated, might feel shame or convince themselves not to cause trouble. This is how intimidation often works. Aggressors rely on the victim's reluctance to speak out. By calling me, by naming what happened, and by refusing to allow fear to dictate her response, she displayed real bravery. Courage does not always look like fighting back physically. It often looks like refusing to be silenced. Education about courage in the face of intimidation begins with understanding that intimidation thrives on isolation. When someone feels alone, they are more likely to submit. But when they know that speaking up will bring support, they gain strength. This is why communities, families, and workplaces must create environments where people feel safe reporting aggression without fear of judgment or retaliation. If we teach children from a young age that telling the truth about bullying or threats is honorable, not shameful, they will grow into adults who can resist intimidation in larger contexts. The principle is the same whether on a playground, in a boardroom, or at a neighborhood mailbox. Another element of courage is recognizing that fear itself can be used constructively. Fear alerts us to danger, but it does not have to paralyze us. When we educate ourselves to view fear as information rather than weakness, we can use it to make wise choices. For example, instead of letting fear drive immediate compliance, we can pause, analyze the situation, and decide how to respond safely. This might mean speaking firmly, setting a boundary, or calling for help. Courage is not reckless, it is calculated strength. Teaching this distinction is important because many people wrongly believe that bravery requires aggression. In reality, the bravest act may simply be standing one's ground without escalating the conflict. It is also important to highlight the ripple effect of courageous actions. When one person refuses to yield to intimidation, others often feel empowered to do the same. Intimidators count on silence spreading through fear, but courage is equally contagious. A neighbor who sees someone reporting suspicious behavior may feel safer doing so themselves. A colleague who watches another stand up to unfair treatment may realize they too have a voice. My wife's refusal to stay silent not only protected her, but also ensured that our neighbors would not fall prey to the same aggressor. Her courage changed the entire community's understanding of what was happening and put an end to it. To cultivate courage against intimidation, people must also learn resilience, the ability to recover quickly from moments of fear or harm. Being intimidated can shake confidence and self-worth, but resilience teaches that these moments do not define us. Educationally, resilience can be built through practice, such as role-playing scenarios where intimidation may occur, or by studying examples of individuals who overcame threats without surrendering their dignity. Knowing that others have stood firm and prevailed gives people a roadmap for their own courage. In the end, courage in the face of intimidation is about reclaiming power. Aggressors seek to dominate by planting fear, but courage uproots that fear and replaces it with determination. Whether it is calling for help, refusing to comply with unjust demands, or simply speaking the truth, each act of courage weakens the hold intimidation has over our lives. The lesson is not that fear will disappear, but that we do not have to let fear decide our actions. Courage allows us to rise above threats and intimidation, and in doing so, we not only protect ourselves, but also inspire those around us to stand firm as well.
Training, discipline, and composure in crisis are qualities that do not appear overnight. They are cultivated through years of practice, exposure, and a commitment to self-mastery. In high-stress situations, most people's natural response is driven by adrenaline, fight, flight, or freeze. While these instincts evolved to protect us, they are not always the best guides in modern crises, especially when lives, reputations, or safety are at stake. The difference between chaos and control often lies in how disciplined and composed a person can remain when others are overwhelmed by fear or anger. This is where training, whether in the military, law enforcement, or even personal development programs, becomes invaluable. Training equips individuals with muscle memory for decision-making. In a crisis, there is little time to analyze from scratch. The body and mind revert to what they have rehearsed. For example, in the Navy SEALs, countless hours are spent repeating drills until they become automatic. It is not about eliminating fear. It is about ensuring that fear does not override the ability to act effectively. This same principle can apply to civilians. Training in first aid, conflict resolution, or even basic self-defense can provide confidence and direction when emergencies occur. Instead of panicking, a trained individual recalls the steps they have practiced, creating order in disorder. Discipline adds another layer to this equation. Training provides the tools, but discipline ensures those tools are applied consistently and responsibly. Discipline is the internal compass that keeps emotions from controlling behavior. In a crisis, anger and fear can easily push someone to overreact, which may escalate the situation further. A disciplined person, however, knows when to hold back, when to speak, and when to act. Discipline prevents rash decisions, such as responding to intimidation with uncontrolled aggression, which might make matters worse. Instead, discipline allows a person to act with precision, applying just the right amount of response to neutralize the threat without unnecessary harm. Composure is the outward expression of this inner discipline. When others witness composure under pressure, it creates a stabilizing effect. Panic spreads quickly in groups, but calm spreads just as fast. A composed leader reassures others that the situation is under control. This is one reason why military and emergency responders train so intensely in maintaining calm voices, steady movements, and focused eyes.
Composure is contagious. Even in civilian life, if one person remains calm during a car accident, a workplace dispute, or a neighborhood conflict, others begin to steady themselves as well. The ability to project composure is as important as feeling it internally. Educationally, the value of training, discipline, and composure can be taught through both formal and informal means. Schools can incorporate crisis response exercises that go beyond simple drills. Workplaces can host workshops on conflict management or stress regulation. Families can practice safety protocols together. These experiences may seem small, but they plant seeds of preparedness. In addition, personal practices like mindfulness, meditation, and controlled breathing can teach individuals how to regulate their emotions and maintain clarity under stress. The mind, like the body, can be trained to resist panic. The fake HOA cop who struck my wife underestimated how training and composure work. He expected fear to paralyze her and anger to consume me. Instead, composure gave me clarity. I immediately assessed his uniform and mannerisms, realizing he was an imposter. Training allowed me to disarm and restrain him without escalating violence. Discipline kept me from lashing out in a way that would have complicated the situation legally. By relying on these qualities, I was able to protect my wife, ensure justice, and prevent further harm. The broader lesson is that every individual, regardless of background, can benefit from cultivating these skills. You do not need to be a Navy SEAL to stay composed in crisis. You simply need to commit to preparation, to practicing calm under pressure, and to disciplining your reactions. When crises arise, it is not strength alone that determines the outcome. It is the ability to apply that strength wisely. Training builds readiness, discipline shapes restraint, and composure inspires confidence. Together, they turn fear into focus and transform ordinary people into steady leaders in moments of chaos.
Protecting our communities is not just the responsibility of law enforcement or government agencies. It is something that begins with individuals and families who choose to take an active role in creating safe and supportive environments. Too often, people assume that safety is someone else's job. They believe that as long as they pay taxes, live in a quiet neighborhood, or follow the rules, protection will naturally be provided. While official structures are important, they cannot anticipate or prevent every threat. A strong community depends on the willingness of its members to look out for one another, to recognize when something is not right, and to act collectively against intimidation, fraud, or danger. The first step in protecting a community is awareness. People must be attentive to their surroundings and willing to notice details. Criminals and imposters thrive on anonymity. They count on neighbors who keep their heads down, who avoid asking questions, and who assume someone else will take responsibility. Simple habits such as greeting neighbors, learning who lives nearby, and staying alert to unusual behavior make it harder for threats to go unnoticed. Awareness is not about being paranoid. It is about cultivating a mindset where members of a community recognize what is normal and can quickly identify what is out of place. Equally important is communication. Communities that share information are far more resilient than those where everyone operates in isolation. If someone encounters suspicious behavior, the impact is multiplied when they tell others. Technology makes this easier than ever through neighborhood apps, social media groups, and text alerts. But old-fashioned methods such as community meetings and personal conversations are just as valuable. Effective communication transforms individual experiences into collective knowledge. For instance, if one resident reports that a stranger is posing as a security officer, others can be on alert and take precautions. Without communication, each person assumes their experience is isolated, and the threat continues unchallenged. Empowerment also plays a key role. People need to feel confident that they can take appropriate action when faced with a problem. This does not mean confronting every suspicious person directly, but it does mean knowing what resources to use. Calling local authorities, reporting to homeowners associations, or documenting incidents can make a huge difference. Empowerment comes from education, understanding how to verify identification, when to contact the police, and what rights individuals have when approached by someone claiming authority. A community that knows its rights and resources is far less likely to be victimized by intimidation or deception. Another layer of community protection involves fostering trust. When people know they can rely on one another, they are more willing to speak up and seek help. Trust is built through consistent interaction, mutual respect, and shared responsibility. It may be as simple as neighbors exchanging phone numbers, organizing watch groups, or checking on one another during emergencies. A culture of trust makes it difficult for aggressors to isolate individuals because everyone knows they have allies nearby. My wife's decision to call me immediately after being attacked by the imposter was rooted in this sense of trust. She knew she would be supported, not questioned or dismissed. Communities thrive when that trust extends broadly. Protecting communities also requires standing up against intimidation whenever it appears. Too often, small acts of bullying, fraud, or harassment are ignored because they seem insignificant. Yet these small acts are testing grounds for aggressors. If no one resists, intimidation escalates. Communities must adopt the principle that no level of intimidation is acceptable. Whether it's a scammer posing as an official, a bully harassing a neighbor, or an aggressor using threats to gain control, the collective response should always be clear. Intimidation has no place here. Finally, the most powerful way to protect a community is by setting an example. When individuals demonstrate awareness, communicate openly, act with courage, and extend trust, they inspire others to do the same. Leadership does not require a title, it requires action. Every person who models integrity and vigilance strengthens the fabric of the community. Protection becomes not a duty handed down from the top, but a shared culture that everyone contributes to. In the end, protecting our communities is about more than preventing crime. It is about creating places where people feel safe, respected, and connected. It is about ensuring that no one has to face intimidation or danger alone. When communities commit to awareness, communication, empowerment, trust, and collective action, they build resilience that no imposter or aggressor can easily penetrate. Safety is not passive. It is something we create together, and it is strongest when every individual accepts their role in guarding the well-being of the whole.